Hello and welcome to CSA San Diego County Fair Housing's first Facebook Live session. We are very excited to be online today to talk about what our agency does, what fair housing is, really talk through a number of common issues. So we encourage you to bring your questions to us, bring your hearts and likes. So glad to have you here. My name is Matthew Hogue. I'm the Outreach Education Coordinator for CSA San Diego County Fair Housing. And here today, we're so excited to have Jonathan Carlos here, who is one of our housing counselors. So we're so honored and excited to have him here to share his expertise with us. He has a master's in public administration, bringing his expertise to the table. So with that, Jonathan, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about what your role is with CSA San Diego County.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan, and my official title here at CSA is Housing Counselor. Therefore, my role with CSA is to conduct intakes on tenant landlord issues / rights, as well as fair housing issues. I am able to provide information, education, and counseling. Depending on the situation, I'm also able to intervene and provide a type of mediation in fair housing. Oftentimes, it is conducted by communicating with housing providers about fair housing rights and potential fair housing violations. And here at our agency, we also have another great tool, which is referrals to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, aka HUD, and the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, commonly referred to as DFEH. These agencies, they process and investigate fair housing cases in a very similar fashion. However, HUD is the agency at the federal level and focuses on 9 protected classes, while DFEH is at the state level, which covers all of those protected classes that HUD does, with the addition of 8 others.
Okay, excellent. So we talked a lot about fair housing, obviously with our agency, and you mentioned a couple of times protected classes as well. So let's go ahead and break those down. So when we talk about fair housing, what are we talking about?
Okay, so fair housing is essentially equal housing opportunity for all. In other words, it is the right to choose housing free from unlawful discrimination and in housing transactions specifically, such as rentals, sales, lending, and even insurance. For instance, refusing to rent or sell housing because of one's religious status or gender or race is a fair housing violation, specifically at the federal level under the Fair Housing Act.
Okay, so when we talk about race and gender, how is that related to this term protected classes? What does that mean?
So a protected class is a certain characteristic that one falls under when considering fair housing violations. For example, at the federal level, we have race, color, religion, national origin, gender, disability, familial status, age, and marital status as well. And the protected classes at the state level here in California are all those aforementioned, with the addition of source of income, citizenship, immigration status, primary language, sexual orientation, gender identity and gender expression, genetic information, military or veteran status.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like California has kind of really expanded some of those protections to a number of different protected classes and groups.
That is correct. California is one of the most expanded states in terms of fair housing protected classes.
Excellent, excellent. So that's great to know. In San Diego County, and actually across the nation, disability is one of the most common protected classes experiencing discrimination. So what are some of the common issues that come across your desk when it comes to individuals and residents who have disabilities?
That is correct. So common issues that arise regarding disability protections include requests to an assigned parking space, for example, which may include more space or a closer distance to the vehicle from a dwelling. Another includes a request for a unit in the lower level of an apartment complex. For those that it would be, detrimental to travel by stairs to a higher level. Another common request is, for example, requesting a service or emotional support animal to be allowed on the property and in the dwelling, of course, for complexes that might otherwise have a no pet policy. So these type of examples, they're essentially exceptions or adjustments to policies and practices that may be necessary for a person with a disability to have an equal use and enjoy a dwelling. And these are most commonly referred to as reasonable accommodations. And the key word here is reasonable. The main reasons they may not be considered reasonable would only be if they cause an undue or an unreasonable burden on administrative duties or expenses on that property.
I see. So if an individual has a disability, they can ask for some type of change to that policy to make sure they can enjoy the unit to the same extent as everybody else living there. But it has to be within that reasonable framework. So they could ask to move to a first floor unit if they have some type of disability inhibiting them from climbing stairs, but it might be far outside of that reasonableness if they ask for an elevator to be built, right?
Exactly.
So trying to find that middle ground. Okay, excellent. So the second most common complaint is around race and potentially national origin protection. So what are some of the common issues that come across your desk when it comes to discrimination based on race or national origin?
So in many cases, unfortunately, individuals are denied housing because of their physical appearance. And this is often where race and national origin violations arise. Just because someone may look Caucasian, African American, Asian, etc. And so one of the most common issues is noticed when a housing provider refuses to rent or sell to an individual based on their race or national origin. And another frequent issue is actually when a housing provider refuses to make repairs or perform maintenance for tenants of a certain protected class. It is, it's extremely crucial to pay attention to when tenants are denied services after they are admitted, because discrimination does not always occur at the forefront of the transaction. It can occur at any moment, just like this example.
I see. So a property manager might be looking for a particular demographic of race or national origin to actually rent to, but then doesn't provide the habitability, doesn't provide that maintenance to that particular complex.
That is correct.
Okay. Wow. The third most common complaint that, as far as I understand it, that comes through is familial status. In San Diego County, there's a lot of complaints regarding families with children. So what does that look like, and what are some of the common concerns that are coming up?
So in terms of familial status, an example would be a family receiving a notice to vacate or being denied housing because there are too many people living in the unit, or there would be too many. However, the rule of thumb is 2 full-size adults per bedroom and 1 for the common area. So I say full-size adults because we can imagine that it would be different to have 2 adults and a newborn, for example, in one room versus a room with 3 adults. So, although for 2 bedroom, 2 per bedroom is not always a clear-cut line. There are still exceptions that exist here. So it's important to always keep in mind and bring forth any, potential fair housing violations, even when there is like a rule of thumb, there's always exceptions, and every case is unique. And also in many cases, families are indirectly discriminated with statements such as there's not many kids around here, or there's no schools nearby. This type of discrimination is called steering. So it's where housing providers try to convince someone to search for housing elsewhere.
I see. So it might be kind of subtle statements, but really pushing somebody who's trying to apply to that housing to actually not move in or move to a different area in terms of kind of steering that family away from their particular choice of where they want to live.
Correct. Yeah. Sometimes they'll even have statements such as, there's not a lot of space here for children to play, like something like that, for example.
Exactly. During COVID, a lot more children have been staying at home. Have there been issues with landlords kind of imposing kind of weird rules specifically targeted towards children?
I have had experience with a few, I guess, addendums to policies where they restrict, families a little bit more, especially with younger children. But I've kind of seen it, kind of just, I guess they're a little bit more relaxed now that, COVID is we're kind of getting over the hump. But there were definitely a few that we were able to address.
Yeah, and with summer coming up again around the corner, more kids will be at home as well. So certainly something to keep in mind. So if somebody does, well, let's kind of back up. The other protected class that I think we wanted to address today was source of income. So I know that that's a little bit more complex of a protected class, but what does that look like, and what are some common concerns that come up with source of income discrimination?
So one that stands out and that has stood out is where individuals are denied housing because they are Section 8 recipients, for example, or if they receive another type of public assistance. This is significant also to keep in mind because Section 8 is considered a valid source of income in the state of California. Oftentimes, housing providers claim that it is not, and that potential tenants must earn 2 times or 3 times the amount of rent, whichever the case may be, in order to discourage them from applying or outright denying them if they do apply.
I see. So if somebody does have Section 8 and they try and apply, the landlord, may say, oh, we don't take Section 8, it's not a valid source of income. But in reality, it's coming from those governmental funds. It is that valid source of income, right?
Correct.
And have there been any issues where a property manager finds out that somebody's receiving Section 8 and then they change the terms to some degree in terms of that application process?
There has been a few examples where it's almost pretty clear cut where, a person contacts a housing provider, an on-site manager at the property, is kind of, in one example, actually, an individual and her children, were able to even have a tour of the unit that they were applying for. And then they were accepted. They actually gave them an application to apply. And once they heard, or, the on-site manager was made aware that the potential tenant was a Section 8 recipient, they were actually denied within a couple of days, stating that there was no reason. So
Wow.
that, that's a very good way to look at it, to where, typically they tell you, well, you don't make enough, or, your credit, your rental history, one of those items, one of those qualifications. But in this case, they outright said there was no reason. So, that's something that we would, as an agency, look into.
Mm-hmm. Of course. So it sounds like for this person, they went through the process, everything seemed fine, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, there was no reason, but there was a denial.
That is correct.
So when, it sounds like a lot of this discrimination happens where something just feels off to somebody, right? They're kind of going through the process, their day-to-day process, looking for housing or asking for some type of maintenance. But in doing so, something feels off in that process. So what should somebody do if they do feel off in some type of aspect of their housing and they think that it's related to discrimination? What should somebody do in that case?
So if you do in fact feel that you are being discriminated against in housing, I would say step one would be to document what occurred, as soon as you can, who has committed the discrimination against you, which in this case will be established as the perpetrator, and when this occurred. Dates will be crucial to your complaint. Step two I would say would be to locate witnesses if there are any. That way you have that backbone there. And step three would be to not react at that very moment, against anyone, and call CSA or your local fair housing agency for assistance. Here at our agency, our counselors can support you in addressing the issue.
Excellent. So first and foremost, document what's happening, see if there are any witnesses, and then rather than kind of responding, seek kind of some of the services that are available to address that particular situation. And CSA, of course, is one of the main places where you could do that. So once somebody gets in touch with CSA, what happens from there if they're kind of moving forward in that discrimination complaint?
So you can contact us directly at our main line, and one of our counselors will conduct an intake with you over the phone, since we currently do not offer in-person counseling sessions due to COVID precautions. In this intake, a counselor will note basic demographic information and ask specific questions in regard to the discrimination in order to assess the issue. So some things we will ask, it will be your name, contact info, address, and things of that nature. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty and ask, what kind of discrimination have you experienced? For example, is it retaliation? Is it denial of housing? Is it denial of services in your housing? Or even denied a reasonable accommodation, as we spoke about earlier. So with that, we will ask one to pinpoint the protected category that one has been compromised, the perpetrator, of course, and the dates of the discriminatory acts. Then we will ask for any witnesses and a desired resolution. So what is it that you need? Like for example, if you are being denied a unit because you are a Section 8 recipient, then we know, it's it's your option if you want us to, potentially see if we can challenge the denial and, have you moved into a unit, for example. So, and we'll give you the platform to give any additional information that is necessary to the case. You'll be able to take your time, give us all the information you feel is important. We will counsel you through collecting additional information and documents. So, once all documents and information are collected, as an agency, we will assess the case. We may intervene directly on behalf of the client or discuss with the client about a referral to submit a fair housing complaint to HUD or DFEH. Or both of these can occur. We can very well intervene, and we can assist you in submitting a complaint at the federal or state level if desired and or deemed necessary.
I see. So it sounds like it would start from that investigation period, collecting all the documents, those dates that need to be tracked, speaking with kind of any witnesses, and then hopefully, it can be mediated so that person can live into the housing they were choosing to do so, or what that outcome might look like. See if we can mediate with the property manager or whomever to kind of move forward the situation. If it's not moving forward, then it sounds like we could work with Housing and Urban Development or with the Department of Fair Employment and Housing to really kind of escalate things to that next level if need be.
Yes.
Okay, great. So with that, I think we covered quite a bit today so far. We talked about what fair housing is and its relationship to kind of equal opportunity in housing. We talked about protected classes and really focusing on the different types of discrimination that might occur under gender, sexuality, race, religion, disability, etc. on kind of the federal levels and then also the state levels. And then we talked about some of the common discriminatory practices under disability, race, national origin, familial status, and source of income. And then we talked about the process that if somebody does feel like they're being discriminated against, where should they go? What should they do? What should they document? And talking with one of our housing counselors, they can help you kind of navigate that process. So with that, I just want to double check, see if we have any questions from our Facebook Live session. And in the meantime, Jonathan, is there anything you have to add to what we've talked about today so far?
I'd just like to encourage everyone to reach out to CSA if you feel or know anyone that may feel that they have been discriminated against. We'll make the process for you a lot easier than it would be to, to challenge it yourself.
Okay, great. So with that, if you do need to get in contact with CSA San Diego County, you can reach out directly via phone at 619-444-5700, or you can email us out, you can email us at outreach@c4sa.org, or go directly to our website, which is c4sa.org. So with that, thank you so much, Jonathan, for taking time today and sharing your expertise. We greatly appreciate it and greatly appreciate all the work that you're doing with individuals who feel they've been discriminated against. And we hope that this message is getting out there so that anybody with any questions whatsoever can give us a call and see what's going on. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out. We will be conducting more Facebook Live sessions throughout the year, so please keep an eye out, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.
Thank you, everyone, for watching.